Okay, so starting with this new chapter, which talks more about the sense organs, and there are only two of the sense organs which are in detail in terms of structure as well as function. That is the eyes and ears. Of course, you have other three, but we are not going to go into details. I assume skin you would have learned in the class 9. Uh, so the sense organs, you know the basics. What are they? Which ones are they? And what do they do? So I'm going to skip this first part because it's you would have studied since again class 4th or even before. So how does this or how do these sense organs function? What kind of senses are we talking about? And how is the signal being processed? So that is what that is when we come to this word called receptors. So receptor, this is a kind of specialized tissue or a cell or even a group of cell, you can say, which are sensitive to a stimulus. And stimulus can be anything. Either it can be a pinch or a touch, it can be a taste or a smell of something, or heat or cold temperature, and so on. So how do they receive this signal or perceive this signal is because of the receptors. Now, I'm not sure if you know a bit about the proteins as receptors. So usually what happens is whenever there is a kind of stimulus generated at the surface of the cell, it changes certain proteins on the cell surface, which triggers the signal of events within the cell, and that becomes ultimately electric potential that will be carried out further from the neighboring cells to a particular nerve or so on. So that's how this general mechanism of the receptor functions. And in general, there are these 5 different receptors, what are known as mechanoreceptor, chemoreceptor, photoreceptor, thermoreceptor, and phonoreceptor. Again, by the name itself, you would know which one are they specific for. Mechanoreceptor, it's like a mechanical touch or pressure on the skin. That is the mechanoreceptor. Chemoreceptor, specifically due to the taste and the smell. There will be the presence of these chemoreceptors which are sensitive to these chemical changes. Now, chemical changes does not literally mean that there is a change in the chemical and then the taste or smell comes. It's rather the property of the chemical which gives this like taste or smell. Then there is something called as photoreceptor, which are in in short, these are the light sensitive receptor. You might have heard of light sensors. So that is something similar that happens in the eyes with the help of this rod and cone cells. We will see what are these into the retinal layer of the eye. So these are the photoreceptors. Thermoreceptor, sensitive to temperature, and the phonoreceptor, they are like receptive to the sound or hearing. Any kind of the sound waves, they will be detected. There will be changes into the whatever potential of the cells, and then that will be carried as a signal from this phonoreceptors to the nerve terminals. So in general, all of these receptors, in a way, they are connected to the nerve, and that nerve will take the signal to the brain. We will see a nerve, what is a nerve and what is the difference between nerve and a neuronal cell. So that difference we'll see in the next chapter, that is central nervous system. So coming to the first structure, I'm going to skip these videos because they are more for you, so you can check it out on your own anytime later. So when we talk about the structure of the eyes, there are various structures within an eye and also around the eye. So when we talk around the eye, there is this orbit, eyelid, eyebrows, and so on. Orbits are those sockets within the skull or within whole of the facial bone structures which accommodate the eyes. And these are located on the front side of the head. You know the location where they are. Everyone knows where their eyes are. So each eye is in the form of a ball. It's a spherical shaped structure and can be rotated with the help of 6 muscles. So there are different types of muscles which are holding this ball-like structure within the eye socket. So usually, again, in class 9, you must have studied about the difference between ligaments, bones, and muscles, right? So muscles are the one which are connecting like two particular joints, right? Ligament is crossing over the joint, and bones, of course, you know. So within this orbit socket, the eye, which is a ball-like structure, is being held with the help of muscles, and of course, there are certain attachment to the bones. So there are these 6 muscles which we'll talk about later. They are called as suspensory ligament and so on. So that is the orbits, eyelids. So there are 2 eyelids, upper and lower, right? 2 types, I mean. In total, there would be 4 for left and right eye. So the upper and lower movable eyelids, they protect the outer surface of the eyes. Outer surface means that means one which is exposed to the surrounding. So that will be protected by the eyelids. Upper eyelid is usually bigger than the smaller one. Smaller one just helps to kind of close the gap between the eye surface. So each eyelid will carry outwardly curved eyelashes which prevent the falling of the larger particle into eyes. So each structure within the eye has certain function. So the function of eyelid is to protect the surface. The function of eyelashes is to prevent the falling of the larger particles or even the smaller particles for that matter into the eye. So that is the eyelid. And then there is structure called as eyebrows, which again everyone would know, which are not, these are not actually the part of the eye, but they are involved in the functioning of the eye altogether. So they are protective, like hair arrangement, which prevent the kind of raindrops or perspiration or any other material falling into the eyes directly. So that is like just kind of a barrier, acting something if it is trickling down from the forehead. So that is eyebrows. Now, a common misconception or common notion that usually boys have is, again, because I'm differentiating or making a kind of sexist remark here. Girls usually do makeup and boys they don't. So there can be sometimes misconception about which is eyelid, which is eyelash, and which is eyebrow. So, but just be aware of these things. Yeah. So, sorry. No, I just said it. So, so then there is a tear gland structure. So tear gland is also known as lacrimal gland, and just the location of the lacrimal gland is shown here. So at the side corner of the eye, on the upward side, there is this lacrimal gland apparatus. Yeah. So is it like behind the eyelids? Is it like behind the eyelids and a little, yeah, it's just behind the eyelids, but on the side, on the corner. So what are other new hypos? Sorry? The MEIBUMIAM. I don't know what is it. We just read yeah, yeah. I don't know what you are talking about. Okay, never mind. I'm in a line. So no. They were located in the eyelids or something. She must have spoken of some terminology related to the blood vessels. MEIBO. Oh, this gland. You can see where, let me show you the location. Images. It's under. Yeah, but I don't know the function of these glands. They also secrete some sort of liquid. Yeah, to keep the eye. Secretion. The eye moist. Yeah. Tarsal glands. Okay, I didn't know their other name. I know this ones. So yeah, it's the main function of all these glands is to protect the eyes in terms of some secretion. So some of them they secrete lysozyme, some of them they just secrete salty water, rather like saline water in general. Okay, so there is this lacrimal gland, uh, which is located on the upward side at the edge of the eye, especially on both sides. The left will have it on the left side and so on. So, and this is kind of with 6 to 12 ducts, which are called as lacrimal ducts or tear ducts, to pour out the secretion at the front surface. So the tears, they are generated within this lacrimal gland. They will be carried from that lacrimal gland with the help of these ducts into the eye surface.
So what kind does this secretion consist of?
It consists of water, salt, lysozymes, and of course there are certain proteins as well. So that is the main, it's the main purpose, like I said, it's to keep it lubricated, and secondly to protect it from the pathogen, because eye is one of the sterile organs. Like, so when you take any tablet or capsule, they need not be completely sterile. But if you take any eye formulation like eye drop or so, it has to be completely sterile. And the reason being because they are very prone to infection, because they are exposed to the outside environment. Like while other, like let's say for example stomach, whenever you take a tablet or something, those microbes, they will be killed within that stomach pH and so on. So they don't need any additional protection. Yeah, so movement of these eyelids, what we call as blinking, it spreads the liquid, and it mainly serves as the lubricant. Again, why is the lubricant required? Because it's a kind of muscular organ or cellular organ which are uh, into the muscle structure. So if they are not lubricated every now and then, it will cause irritation in the sense dryness, and then it will cause itching and irritation. So that's like and then there's,
It can also cause blindness, right? I guess.
sorry,
Like if you don't lubricate your eye, like if it's not naturally lubricated, you will eventually go blind, na?
yeah, but then that's like a very last stage. So body will always find some mechanism to keep those cells surviving, and that's when there are other fluids present in the eye as well, apart from this tears. But yes, eventually if it goes on, it will happen. Yes, Nandan.
So does this is this dryness the cause of myopia and the other thing?
No, myopia and hyperopia, these are two different things. That is just kind of squeezing or elongation of the lens, that we will
It's
see.
not related in any way to.
They are not directly related to the dryness, but what happens because of the dryness of the eyes is you because your eyes like you need to squint them sometimes, or what you say is like kind of make them smaller to look at something, and that becomes the habit of the eyeball structure, and then that will lead to something. But that's again a very like a long endeavor, I must say. If you keep on doing every now and then, your eyes get trained to be like that, but otherwise no. So the tears also keep the front surface of the eye clean by washing away the particles, and this you would observe very easily, especially at in the morning when you wake up, right? Sometimes you would have like found the dirt at the corner of the eyes. That is because the tear, they keep washing away the particles as and when it comes to them. Also, like if at all some very fine particles go into the eyes, let's say like dust, we usually tend to rub our eyes. So if you avoid that and just let that eye take care of it, it until and unless it's really pinching and stuff, of course then you need to do something about it. But if it is just kind of coming in the sight, you should just let it go, and it will come automatically out within a minute or so, because that's the natural tendency of eye to wash away those particles. The tear also has antiseptic property due to the presence of lysozymes which kills the germs. Now you know what um, lysosomes contains within a cell. So similar protein mixtures, they are present in the lysozyme of this tear gland, which has proteases, lipases, and all those saccharases and so on. These are different types of enzymes to neutralize all different kinds of molecules within the body. And of course, germs or the pathogens, they are made up of certain chemicals. So they will be ultimately killed by the action of this lysozyme. So that way they have antiseptic property. And of course the function of the tears, which talks of the same um, things, except this communicating emotion. Now this is another interesting fact. Obviously you know that whenever someone is sad, the tears, they tend to roll down the cheeks, right? So that is like just in communicating a particular emotion, and this is actually the effect of. So whenever you are sad, you are perceiving that as an emotion. The this particular signal will be sent to the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain, and from there the signal will come to the lacrimal duct and the tears will roll down. So that's like again a chain of event.
What is the emotional center?
It's called amygdala.
Yeah.
AMY AMYGDALA.
Amygdala.
Amygdala. It's located at the base of the brain.
That's why. Huh?
Why? Okay, so that is the function of the tears and the function of the structures related to the eye. Of course, there are other structures, like for example, if you look on the other side, there is another lacrimal canal, which is superior lacrimal canal, and then there is inferior lacrimal canal, and they are connecting this like the lacrimal uh, whatever secretions to the lacrimal sac. This is like in connection with your nostrils or the cavity within the nose, and which is called as nasolacrimal duct. Naso is for the nose and lacrimal for the eyes. So the connection or connecting tubule between the eyes and the nose, that is the nasolacrimal duct. So sometimes, like I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but if you put a drop in your eyes, sometimes you feel that taste through the pharynx or through the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is because of this presence of this nasolacrimal duct, like within our or close to the nose.
So I mean, when I touch feel my hand, I feel like the bone, right? Which is
Yeah.
So where exactly? So obviously not like with the bone, right? So it's like above that, just under the skin.
No, it is below that.
Oh,
So you have this eye socket right here, right next to that. So inside there is a duct. You
so
can't
like
feel it
the
from
bone,
outside.
the
Yeah.
bone is the closest
Yeah.
place.
And above the bone, you just have hardly 2-3 layers and then skin.
Oh,
So there is nothing outside as such apart from certain blood capillaries.
maybe I know it's really easy.
You want to try it? But also another difference, like this front part of the nose is the all cartilage, right? Cartilage is just kind of hard fibrous tissue. So that tissue will also need certain like maybe let's say a nerve signal or blood capillaries. All of these will be present even in the tip of the nose.
Oh yeah, is that why it hurts so much when you get hurt on the nose? Because
Yeah.
it hurts on the nose more than anywhere.
Yeah. Okay, so these are the various structures associated with this lacrimal gland. So now we'll come to the original or the actual structure of the eye. So these, whatever we had seen so far, they were more of the structures around the eye. Now the structure of the eye as such involves quite a lot of names. Again, all of these you have to remember. Most of them you might have known earlier, like I'm sure retina or lens or cornea, these you would have heard, or conjunctiva. But the other structures we have to know. So this is how a diagram looks like. But to draw, I have kept one more additional diagram. So let's say if you have to draw for a practice, you can refer to this diagram. Both of them, they have similar structure. So starting with the outermost structure of the eye, that is the conjunctiva. So again, when I talk of outermost, that means, let's say when I have to show my own eye structure. So from outside, if you move inside towards the brain through the eye structure, first layer that you will feel is that of conjunctiva. So this outermost layer is the conjunctiva. This, let's say this line is the conjunctiva. So conjunctiva is a very thin membrane covering the entire part of the eye. Entire part of the eye, as in the whole of the eye structure, which is continuous with the inner linings of the eyelids. So whatever red part of the eyelid you see when you twist them around, so that red part is actually in continuation with the conjunctiva, which is the outermost surface of at least that white and black part that you see. It's a single layer of transparent epithelium. Transparent, again, this is not just transparent in the sense that you can see through it, it is optically transparent. That means it does not deflect or deviate or refract or reflect light. That is what is meant by the transparent. So it is optically transparent epithelial layer. And conjunctivitis, which is a very commonly occurring like disease, I would say, or infection. That is the inflammation of conjunctiva due to a virus, not conjunctivitis, inflammation of the conjunctiva due to a virus. So this virus, what they do is, because of their growth, they create a kind of acidic situation. Because of this, irritation happens, and obviously there is kind of pus formation and so, which is the debris, debris as in the waste material of this virus. So when the viruses, they are dead, whatever material is left out, that's what comes out as, which is like a that whitish material when conjunctivitis happens. So that is the inflammation of conjunctiva,
What is the virus?
the debris of the viral particles. So again, one of the common type of disorders or infection is the inflammation within the whole body. So wherever you see this word called as last, the suffix itis, that indicates the inflammation. So if I say tonsillitis, that means inflammation of tonsils. Meningitis, that is inflammation of meninges. There are so many such terms. So wherever that itis word comes, that means inflammation of that particular organ. So here it is conjunctivitis. Then the second structure, which is the whole of that spherical ball, is or the forming the wall of that spherical shape, is the eyeball. An eyeball is mainly composed of three layers: sclera or sclerotic layer, choroid, and the retina. So again, from outside to inside you are going, and again these are not present throughout. Like if you consider a sphere, you will not find all three layers at every time point. And how, that I will show you.
So it's sclerotic layer. So is it retinal layer or is it retinal layer?
Retinal layer, you can see it.
And what about the seeds?
Choroid layer, or just choroid. You can call them individually, just sclera or sclerotic layer, choroid or choroid layer, retina or retinal layer, or even retina layer. That's also good enough. So like I said, again, if we go from outside to inside, one more thing while you are imagining whole of this structure, imagine this in terms of a sphere, not in terms of a circular plate, right? So this is a sphere. Like if I have the whole spherical eyeball structure, and if I can't cut it from the top to bottom, that is the vertical section, into two half, what I look at in the internal section is all these layers. So if you look at this outermost layer now, conjunctiva is the outermost on the front side. Here, Where is this sclera? Oh, they have not. No, here it is. Yeah. So here the sclera is the outermost layer. Within the sclera, you will have choroid layer, and within choroid, you will have retinal layer. So let's say, for example, this whitish thing is the sclera, that which is all over the eye, right? This whitish layer that you are seeing, that is the sclera. Within or inside to it, this dark layer or dark line of layer you can see, that is of the choroid. And you can see at one point it is kind of missing where when it is close to the lens, but that does not mean that it is actually missing. It is just not present at the area where the lens is, otherwise it's present. So it's kind of whole eye, and at the center on the front side you will have a small opening so that the light can pass through it, right? So that is like a closed cup like arrangement. Yeah. So do not imagine eye is a complete sphere. Of course it's spherical in shape, but at the front side there is a small opening, and that I will show you in a picture later. So outermost layer is the sclera, then this dark layer which is shown here, which is kind of dark brown, or I don't know, whatever that color, it's choroid. And then this yellowish layer, a thin line of yellow, light yellow color, that is the retina. So you can see retina present there.
So they've not mentioned choroid in that diagram, no?
Yeah, I was just checking. You can see it here. Sclera, then inside to sclera is choroid, and inside to that is retina.
Just one thing, there's this thing, vitreous gel.
Hmm?
But isn't vitriol like a acidic substance or something? Vitriol.
I'm not sure what is vitriol.
Like blue vitriol is what? Copper sulfate.
Sorry, what?
The like vitreous, I'm asking whether it's related to vitriol. And because vitriol is this copper sulfate.
I don't know. I don't know about vitriol, but surely it has nothing to do with the. It's the vitreous cavity, and the liquid which is present within the vitreous cavity is called as vitreous liquid or vitreous fluid. Sorry. Okay, so these are the three layers: sclera, choroid, and retina. So now looking at the first layer, that is the sclera. So it is made up of the tough fibrous tissue and white in color. So obviously it's the outermost layer, in the sense that conjunctiva is just kind of protective additional layer, but the sclera is the first and primitive protective layer of the whole of the eye structure, and it is tough and fibrous. And why it has to be like that? It's obviously because of its function to protect. And when you look at the eye, the white portion in front of the eye, that is what is the sclerotic layer. So it is extending even backward to the complete whole spherical shape. But and that's when I said, in that black pupil region, you don't see this portion of the sclera. I mean, you don't see it, right? But otherwise, it is present all around it throughout the eyeball structure. And yeah, white portion of the front of the eye is the sclerotic layer, itself visible through the conjunctiva. Yeah, that is visible through the conjunctiva, because on the side next to the pupil you can actually see that white portion. It bulges out and becomes transparent. Now again, this transparent refers to optically transparent. So like I said, sclera is present throughout the eyeball or throughout that spherical shape. So it becomes transparent in the front region, where it will cover the colored part of the eye, and what we call that colored part is the cornea, right? So let me show you in that diagram again. So you can see now here, because this is the diagrammatic representation, they have shown it as it is, as a complete layer of the sclera, this whitish layer. But at this region, like especially where the cornea is present or where this pupil is located, in front of that sclera is transparent.
So in front of the pupil of the eye.
Front of the pupil of the eye. and the rest of the tissue, rest of the sclera tissue is whitish there. So, and why it is transparent is obviously to allow the light to pass through. That is very simple. Where is it? So actually there is a little mistake in this diagram. You can see sclera is inside and cornea is outside. Actually what they should have shown is the sclera on the outermost layer and then the corneal layer. Not that literally cornea is, it's kind of merge of the sclera. So, but yeah, like this diagram that way is very efficient to protect. So you can see the sclera is there and then the corneal layer is inside. So that's when I said when you draw a diagram, you ideally draw this kind of triangle. So there is this sclerotic layer which is transparent in front of the eye, and then there is cornea. Also remember, when you refer to some of the diagram, you will find them or you will simply believe them, but there can be so many mistakes with them. So that is the part of the sclera, and the part which is being covered in front of the eye is the cornea. So cornea can turn opaque or non-functional in some patient, and there are these again you might have heard cataract, which is a simple cellular growth in front of the eye that is on the corneal surface, and that because of that the vision become blurred. So the treatment is usually removal of that layer, either by surgery to the cells are being broken down to some extent or by physical removal of it. So that is the cataract, and that's when the opaque or non-functional cornea can be treated. Cornea can remain alive. This is a kind of a fact. Cornea can remain alive up to 40 hours after the death. So let's say a person is dead, you can see the corneal cells almost alive up to 40 hours, but they can be transplanted to the next individual, whosoever needs it, within first 4 hours of the death. After 4 hours, this tissue starts becoming non-functional and only some of the cells will remain alive. But if you want to transplant it, like corneal transplant, that has to happen within the 40 hours, and the corneal tissue has to be taken out within the 4 hours of the death. Again, that's like an approximate time. It's not that within, like I can take it out in 3 hours 59 minutes or so, but it's like approximate time frame. So within 4 hours, it's usually the good time to take out the cornea. So that is first and the outermost layer of the eye, sclera. Then there is choroid layer, which is the inner layer to the sclera. This layer is rich in terms of blood vessels, providing the nutrition or nourishment to whole of the eye structure. And also that is when sometimes you see in that white part of the eye, like especially in some of the individuals, you see there are these red markings, right? That is of the blood vessels. That is very much visible, and that happens when the irritation or dryness of the eyes has occurred. So that is a very common example. So, and that is from the choroid layer, which is visible. This choroid layer also contains a dark black pigment, which we know of melanin, which is also present in the skin or in the hair and so on. So this pigment is present in the choroid layer to prevent the reflection of the incoming light and scattering inside the eye. So obviously, you know, all the black bodies in physics terminology, they have a tendency to absorb light, any wavelength of light. Black body, they have tendency to absorb light. So that is what is the function of this black pigment within the structure of the eye. So that whatever light is required will be obviously falling onto retina. Whatever is not required will be absorbed by this melanin layer from the, or melanin pigments from the choroid layer, so that the light is not reflected or refracted or nothing happen, no deviation of the light path. So that is the melanin pigment. Also, this is very, very important. Otherwise, like let's say the light is coming into your eyes from certain objects, and that is kind of getting deflected, right? So then you would see there will be a mix of signal, because that light is not straight away going to retina, rather it's traveling throughout the spherical structure of the eye and then it is falling onto retina. So that way there will be too many images or mixture of images will be generated, and which may not give clear picture. So to avoid that, whatever is not required will always be absorbed by this melanin layer, and the rest will be falling onto the retina to give us certain image.
Middle
Middle
layer,
layer.
yeah, a front part, and absorbs any unnecessary light that is entering.
Yeah, so it is like, let me show you again in this only I show you. So let's say light travels from this conjunctiva, cornea, this anterior cavity lens, and it falls onto retina, which is the first layer inside the eye structure. From retina, there will be some light which will not be taken up by the retinal cells, right? Not all of it. So that's what will goes and fall onto the choroid layer. There it will be absorbed. Otherwise, it would have been deflected had that black pigment or melanin wouldn't have been there. It would have a deflected back or reflected back, and then it will keep traveling, and then it will fall onto some other layer at some other point on the retina. So to avoid that, it has to be completely absorbed.
Okay, question.
Hmm.
How does light damage the eyes?
Light does not damage the eye.
I mean, if you look at the sun for so long,
Ha. Okay, so that is like, it's called blanching. Like, you know what blanching is, right?
you see something weird,
No, blanching of the leaves.
or like that.
Yeah.
Right?
So something like that. So whenever there is too much of the signal, uh, uh, it's like you have 1 ampere adapter and you put it in a 10 ampere socket. What will happen? Dudum, right?
Boom.
Yeah.
There's no
Uh,
credits for the sound effect award. It was a nice sound. So I did such a nice sound effect. You didn't even give me credit for it.
I don't know what was that. Maybe do it again.
Boom.
Yeah, exactly. So so that is what happens. So same happens with the eyes as well. Eyes, they are usually made to receive the visible light. Visible light has a certain energy content. Now let's say UV content or any higher wavelength light is flashing in surge, right? All of these retinal cells, they will be flooded with the signal. That is the solar energy or the light signal or photon signal coming to the retinal layer, that will be translated into the electrical signal. So that is like too much of signal, and that is when eyes completely blank out. And if it is too high, they might damage the whole eye. So that's the whole thing. Mhm. Okay, so yeah, where were we? Yeah, so we spoke of this melanin pigment and the incoming rays of the light. So just to avoid the scattering of those, or scattering and reflection of those light inside the eye, choroid expands to form the ciliary body, which are the circular muscle in front of the eye. So I will show you. So at the start, I spoke of those 6 different types of muscle. So 2 of them, these are the ciliary or circular muscles. So if you look at this particular structure, ciliary body. So if you see choroid layer, that is the middle layer, it is extending to form these ciliary muscles, which are holding the lens structure at its place. So that is the ciliary body or ciliary muscles. Again, here also you can see them. Same choroid layer is extended to hold this lens structure of the eye, which is an extension of the choroid layer. So again, there had been a question, what is the extension, or what becomes which part within the eye structure, or what is the extension of this structure? So there, these kind of questions can come. So choroid in front of the eye forms the circular or circular muscle or ciliary body muscles to hold the lens structure. I guess we'll quickly look at this last part and then we will stop. Though there is quite a lot in terms of retina to look at. So retina is the innermost layer. So from sclera, choroid to retina, which is the innermost, and is sensitive to light. So no other layer. So whatever you are able to see in terms of light, dark, colors is because of the retina layer.
Colors.
Yeah, all of the colors that you see is because of the retina. So there are these two different types of cells within the retina, what are called as rod cells and the cone cells. And they are sensitive. So rod cells, they are sensitive to dim light. Dim light means less amount of light, and but they do not respond to color. So that is a very simpler imagination. How to remember this? You just have to remember rod cells, they are sensitive to dim light. In dim light, especially at night, you don't really differentiate the colors, not in the presence of tube light or so, right? I'm talking in terms of dark, you don't differentiate the colors very well. So that is when rod cells, they are sensitive to dim light, but they do not respond to colors. And they contain a pigment called as rhodopsin, or it is also called as visual purple, which is present throughout the retina.
What is the pigment?
It's called as rhodopsin. It's a kind of molecule, a protein like, not protein like molecule.
It's pigment for what?
I will show you the structure first. What did I say? Rhodopsin. Structure. So this is like a protein molecule, okay, which has this beta plated sheet. Like, forget about tertiary structure of regular protein. The function of this rhodopsin is like it takes the signal from the what is it, light. It will convert it into the electrical signal. That electrical signal will generate into the electrical potential, and that will be, yeah, and that electrical signal will be going to the nerve terminal, optic nerve, which is present within the eyes, and then that will be carried as the whatever picture that it is carrying. So that is the function of this rhodopsin pigment, and it is present in the rod cells. Again, rod and rhodopsin, it's easier to remember which pigment and which cell. Then the second type of cell present within the retina is the cone cells. Cone cells, they are sensitive to bright light, and they are responsible for color vision. Again, the same analogy which I described earlier, because in the daylight you can clearly see a whole lot of colors. So that way, these cone cells, they are sensitive to bright light, and they are responsible for color vision. So whatever colors you are seeing is actually because of the cone cells. Now again, how do you remember this? CC, cone color. So that way you can remember it. So there will be no confusion at all. And the cone cells, they contain iodopsin pigment. Like rod cells, they have rhodopsin. Cone cells, they have iodopsin. Again, the same function. They will take the signal from the light. They will transfer or convert it into the electrical signal, and that electrical signal will be traveling through the nerve terminal to the brain. So they are cone cells, and they are mostly confined to the yellow spot. We will talk of this yellow spot in the later classes. As of now, I'm just leaving it to you here. If there are any questions, you can ask. We will also learn a little bit detailed structure of retina. Like I will talk about how does it function and so on. But as of now, I will prefer to stop here. But if you have any questions related to this from earlier topics, let me know.
Or do you blind?
So